Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to my channel once again. Thank you so much for joining me. Now today I've got a really interesting project that I want to share with you guys. Now my wife and I, we bought this property a couple of years ago, and as you well know, it was kind of a fixer-upper, and we've slowly been making our way from room to room, renovating this property. I'm trying to do it as economical as possible. This means that I've been doing a lot of the DIY projects around the property in order to get it up to a nice standard where we can all be happy, while of course saving us as much money as possible. Now in today's video I'll be showing you step by step from start to finish how I actually got these wonderful scaffolding board shelves for a very low price, because I did it myself. Now I'll be showing you from scratch, so it's going to be a bit of a longer video, but please stick around for the end. I hope that you will like these boards, and if you do like them, don't forget to hit that like button as well as subscribe to this channel as I continue to give you regular content week after week. As far as DIY projects goes, this is probably one of my favorites so far, so I hope you also enjoy it. Now I'll be putting links to some of the materials in the description below, so if you're thinking about doing this, please, like I said, go right ahead. It's not the most complex of DIY project, however it can be time consuming, so do bear that in mind. So without any further ado, let's get into the video. So after collecting these scaffold boards in the car, which was sourced locally for a really good price, these boards were kept in the house in order to dry them out a bit as they were a bit wet. Of course it's winter now, so unfortunately the weather isn't particularly dry outside. They were in pretty rough condition, but this is exactly what I was looking for, as I wanted them to have lots of character. The brand new boards from the shop would have cost upwards of £20 per length, and obviously by the time I got the amount that I needed, it would have cost me close to £100 for the same quantity that I only spent around £26 on. So as you can see here, there's a lot of rough edges which needed to be sanded. Now I tried my best to use this old belt sander, but it just wasn't cutting it. I realized quite early on that I would possibly need something better, so I did give it a good go by sanding down all of the edges. I tried my best to remove as much as I could, but it still wasn't removing as much as I wanted it to, unfortunately. If you are looking to sand down boards, especially if you're doing as many shelves as I am, I would definitely recommend that you invest in an orbital sander or something of a higher quality. It might cost you a bit, but in the long run, especially if you're thinking of doing projects like this again, I absolutely recommend it. So I managed to invest in this orbital sander, which was on sale for around £40 if I'm not mistaken. And let's just say the difference in performance is night and day. As you can see here, it's absolutely just chomping away through these boards, and in no time I was able to get the smooth consistency that I was looking for. I'm currently using a 60 grit sandpaper here, which is quite coarse, but you know, when you want to get rid of a lot of the exterior part of the wood, all of those rough edges, you know, it's best to go with something that is quite coarse. So once that was done, I then switched to the 240 grit sandpaper, which is a lot smoother and finer. This is just to finish it up and give it a nice smooth finish. And I was really pleased with how this all turned out. Honestly guys, I can't recommend it enough. that you get an orbital sander if you're going to be doing jobs like this. After doing my research, I realized that a lot of people use a sanding sealer, especially when you're working with natural raw wood such as this pine that is super absorbent and just soaks up a lot of the dye or the stain at the end. After searching online, I managed to pick up this tin of cellulose sanding sealer which worked a treat. All you have to do is just spread it on with a brush, nice and thin, and let it dry. It doesn't take too long to dry, maybe an hour depending on the temperature. And once it's dried, then you're good to go. Once it's dry, then you're good to go, because what this actually does is stop the dye from seeping too deep into the wood, which reduces the amount of blotchiness that you get where some areas might absorb more than others. This sanding sealer also helps to give you a more even finish at the end, as well as stop any oils from the wood actually coming through to ruin your finish. So I've decided to go with the colorant dye here. I've chosen a shade called a Jacobean Dark Oak, which was a bit of a trial and error as it didn't seem too dark, but at the same time I think it would give me a nice finish. Now you don't get a lot of dye in these tins, unfortunately, so you have to be very smart with how you apply it so that you don't actually waste it. I think this costed me around £10 if I'm not mistaken. I will put the links to each one of these products in the description below. So after the cellulose has dried and you're happy with the finish, you simply give it a light sanding to remove any bits so that the dye can have a nice smooth surface to bond to. Now after doing my research online, a lot of people said that it was best to apply the dye with a piece of cloth. I thought that would have been the easiest way and would give me the best finish. But after doing it for the first time, I quickly realized just how much dye you'd actually need in order to give it a couple of coats, as a lot of it gets absorbed into the rag, and I just felt that it didn't give me the desired finish that I was looking for. The second time round, I then decided to use a brush to actually brush in the dye into the wood to see how it would actually come out, and I was very surprised to see how much more consistent it actually looks when I applied it with a brush. Also, the coverage and the color looked a lot better when applied with the brush, not to mention how much easier it was. So I mean, at the end of the day, different people might prefer to use the cloth, but I did prefer in the end to use the brush. And after seeing the comparisons, here on the left you can actually see the one that was done with the cloth, but on the right was the one that was done with the brush after just one coat. So I definitely recommend giving both a go before choosing which you'd actually prefer to use. Now here I decided to have a little experiment to see if I could save myself some time by actually just applying the dye directly to the sanded boards without actually putting any sanding sealer on. And let's just say it didn't work out as good as I thought it would, as there was a lot more blotchiness and inconsistency with the finish. I found myself applying a lot more dye to try and make it as even as possible. I decided to give this one up because I wouldn't be left with any dye if I'd continued. So suffice to say, I went back to actually using the sanding sealer first before applying the dye, as I only had one tin, and of course I'm all about saving money, guys, so I didn't want to waste it. I did also find that the boards came out a lot darker by the time I was finished without adding the sanding sealer. So that's something you should also bear in mind. Now if you do have a lot of dye, or potentially if you're using a wood stain, it might be worthwhile giving it a go. However, I did find that it did take a lot more in order to give it a nice even finish. So guys, once I kind of perfected a little routine, all I then had to do was rinse and repeat. This took me quite some time, don't let this video fool you. As you will see in the finished project, I did do quite a few shelves, and I even had a couple left over which I'm planning on using in another room. So I did actually have to go through a lot of boards. However, if this was a smaller project where I only had a couple of pieces of the board, you know, it wouldn't have taken that long at all. But like I said, definitely invest in a good sander if you're thinking of doing it from scratch. Now I did find that the piece that was done without sanding sealer actually came out a lot darker than the others, so that's something you definitely got to bear in mind. And here are the finished boards, guys. There's only one step left before they're completely finished. I've done 2 coats of the dye, and all that is left now is for me to apply the varnish. Now varnishing was by far my favorite part because it was so easy. It was literally just applying a thin coat of this varnish, and again, links will be in the description below if you're looking to purchase this. I actually had a bit of sunshine, which was really nice. Don't let it fool you though, it was absolutely freezing outside, as this was in the early part of January. But I must say that I was really pleased with how these turned out. They were absolutely shining in the natural light, and I must say that I was really happy with how they turned out. Now all that was left, guys, was for me to just leave them for a few days to dry and harden. Now the final step in this project is to attach these boards to the wall. Now this was perhaps the most nerve-wracking part, as I didn't want to get it wrong. I wanted to make sure the boards were as evenly spaced as possible. I did get this idea of using these boards off Pinterest, so I kind of came up with my own little arrangement in order to maximize the space, but as well as allow the boards to be aesthetically pleasing. Now I really like the finished product, and hopefully if you're thinking of doing this job yourself, you know, don't be afraid to experiment, guys. You know, get a piece of paper beforehand and, you know, draw it out to see what it actually look like, and at the end of the day I'm sure it'll be great. Just give it a go. What I would encourage you to do is get a piece of paper beforehand and do a little sketch of what you would like the project to actually look like once it's finished. Now I do recommend, when it comes to attaching the brackets, which are these metal brackets which I bought on eBay, now I do recommend when attaching these boards to the wall that you do have an extra pair of hands, as they are quite heavy. Plus when you're attaching these metal brackets, which I found on Amazon, there are 2 different types that you can get, but I really like these ones, so I decided to go with this finish. I also thought about spray painting these brackets, but in the end I decided to just leave them as they were. Now here you can see me attaching the first pair of brackets along with the first shelve, and I was really pleased with how it came out. All that was left for me to do was to take my time and measure up the distance from the bottom shelves to the top one, and then just drill the remaining holes to fit the brackets before attaching them to the wall. I can't stress, guys, how important it is for you to have the right tools for the job, because even a novice like myself can get a project like this completed with the right tools. Don't forget, measure once and cut twice, guys. That's my top tip for today. Now after attaching brackets to the wall, I simply placed each board on each pair of brackets. I then used some small screws to fix the underside of these boards to the brackets to stop them from moving around, and voila, it's all done. So there you go guys, the project is done and dusted, and I'm so happy with how it all came together. Honestly, it did take me quite a long time to do, but that's partly because of the weather that's been kind of crazy. Trying to do woodwork outside during winter, I wouldn't recommend it. However, I am really happy with how it all turned out. Hopefully you can see it just behind me. We started decorating it now with our bits and pieces, and as the years go on, I'm sure we'll be having more and more things being displayed on there. I absolutely love it, and I can highly recommend this DIY project for someone who's looking to save some space, have some storage to display their pictures or whatever it is. You know, you can use it to store a lot of different things. So I definitely recommend it. I want to say a huge thank you once again for all your support. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Kenroy saying I'll see you when you see me. Take care.